Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 58. And today we have the champ himself, Pro Point 4 winner, Ryan Patrick George, RPG, the man with a rocket of a leg. And we're going to be talking about that leg and so much else about Pro Point, everything that went down, as well as talking about Ryan's career a little bit in today's episode. Ryan, it's an honor to have you on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I guess start for our Black Belt Magazine audience that maybe doesn't watch sport karate or hasn't been following for the past couple of years when you've been on the come up and winning lots of major titles and things of that nature. We're going to get into some of those accomplishments as we go through. But for our audience that maybe hasn't seen you before, just kind of tell us a little bit about who Ryan George is and how did this whole martial arts journey start for you?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Jackson, man, for just having me on the show. Thank you for what you do. You keep putting us out there, man, and that just pushes our sport to another level. And I really do appreciate that. But as for me, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, born and raised. I started martial arts at about age 3. I'm gonna say in 1993. I was making 4, but I like to say I was 3. I was right on the cusp. And my dad would take me to this dojo. It was called Blue Line. He would take me there. They didn't accept kids my age, and we would just watch class all the time. And I would just do everything on the side. And finally, the instructor just decided my instructor decided to, go ahead and start a class for me. And he called it the Power Ranger class. And it just grew from there, just having a couple young kids hopped in. Out of all those kids, I was the only one made it to black belt, but who started in my original class. But it's just I love this thing, man. It's a part of my life. Like other kids chose I did basketball and did other sports, but when it came time to make the decision on, you got practice at this time, you want to do this or go to karate, I just chose to go to karate instead. So it was and it paid off in the long run. It's taken me around the world. I've met some of my best friends in the world, people I call my family. Like really, like I hang with a lot of people from my city, and I hang with my actual family from my city, but my deep friends and close friends who I'm with on a regular are just karate people, and I look forward to seeing them every weekend. Once this pandemic is over with, we get back to normal.
Yeah, I was about to say, we all can't wait to be back to normal and see. And that's one of the cool things about sport karate is that even though we're always competing against each other, I think that every sport karate athlete I've ever talked to has met their best friends and people they consider family in the ring of competition, right? I mean, you're punching and kicking each other in the face and you still come out of it and enjoy each other's company and our friends and family afterwards. And that's one of the great things about martial arts is that we can beat each other up, we can compete against each other, we can be competitive. But at the end of the day, once we step off the mat, we're all after the same goal. We all love the same thing. And that's what we can bond over, which is awesome. So now I want to get into, because not everybody, even though we love sport karate, obviously not all martial artists do sport karate. And it can sometimes be kind of hard to find and get into because a lot of schools don't even mention it or teach about it, right?
True.
So how did you get into point fighting and competing in general in the first place?
Well, luckily my dojo was a competition school. Like they they love to compete locally. Of course, they like pretty much dominated. Like we got a whole karate history in the city of New Orleans between rival dojos and like the back in the day school takeover, hostile takeover stuff. So I just kind of jumped in the middle of that type of lifestyle. But I pretty much competed from, I'm gonna say about age 5 or so when they had they started making divisions for us in that age group, and it's been nonstop ever since. And about I'm gonna say. They had a tournament, the Slug Fest, that was always in New Orleans. So they definitely always have the national competition would come down and we would see the different things. Like, it opened my eyes up to what competition really brings. Locally you see stuff, but then when you see that national competition and there's no YouTube and all of that stuff to look at that stuff back then. So it's really just, you only see it in person and live. And I would see people doing forums. I would see the fighters, they call lightweight black belt men's. I was sitting down front row just to watch. And that kind of just pushed me to a new level, like pushed me to a new motivation, I would say,
That's cool. And it's interesting how you talk about Slugfest and being in your home state and kind of seeing competitors there and being inspired by them. My story was kind of similar. My first NASCAR tournament was Bluegrass Nationals. Obviously, Slugfest was NBL, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But Bluegrass was my first big tournament. It was the NASCAR
Mhm.
tournament, and it was same thing. I grew up in Kentucky, home state, went up to that tournament, and that's where I saw everything, and that's when I got hooked. So you mentioned watching Forms and Weapons competitors, but then always sit in front row for point fighting. Were you ever a Forms and Weapons guy? Did you ever compete with it, or were you just always?
Yeah, man. I used to get out there in my day. I maxed out at 9 divisions in my day, man. So
Ah,
yeah, I was traditional weapons, creative weapons. Then you had the musical weapons. You put those in. I did self-defense. Uh, I was always at the cusp. Like they had the Josh Durbins and people I was competing against, and so they were like they were obviously the dominant forces like at that time, and like I didn't necessarily have the tutorage down here in the South, that we had. So I kind of was winging it a lot of the times, but I did good. I was able to keep up. I had an instructor that he ended up being he's a stunt coordinator, Larnell Snowball. And but he would go to Hollywood, and anything he learned out there, whenever he came home, he would just show me, some new stuff. And I was like, he met Steve Terada, he met like all of those guys out there, and he would just show me anything he learned from them. And that's when I tried to figure it out. And then my dad would force me to hit a pad with it because I couldn't do it in a farm unless I could hit something with it. So it worked out from there, man. Just having those inspirations, looking ahead, looking at those guys, like that, that is what kept me going, and that want to just be great at martial arts, or try to be at least. Mhm.
absolutely, that's awesome. And it's not hard to imagine how you would have been good at creative, extreme musical forms because of the aerial kicking that we see you hitting people with in point fights, right? So just out of curiosity, when you did Forms and Weapons, what was your favorite Forms and Weapons division to do?
I'm gonna say I'm gonna go open hand. So it was like well, back then it didn't, well, I keep saying back then, I ain't that old, but it was like, it was before they just started making it extremes. It was just creative forms, creative music. So I definitely love doing music because I would always, I was able to experiment with the music that I use. Like I did sword, like before sword was like super cool, but I did like my sword was heavy. But I did I did it to Highlander, you know what I mean? The theme music, the Highlander, and then I did some Eric B. and Rakim in my open hand form. And I like open hand because I was able, I obviously like to put my hands on the ground a little bit and do capoeira or whatnot. So it allows me to, be a little more free and not be restricted. But I did a little bow in my day as well. I did it. I tried everything, just to be a martial artist, man. They called it a Power Ranger class, but I really joined because I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. So like that was my, that's what I wanted to do. So I wanted to work every weapon that they worked. I wanted to try it like that. And ironically, later on in life, I became a Ninja Turtle and was in like a traveling show, and I was able to be every turtle except for Michelangelo. Like, yeah, Tim Conker was always there, and he, Mike had the most tricks. So I never could get that spot, but I was able to be everybody else. But so it paid off. So like I literally achieved one of my childhood dreams through martial arts. So
That's awesome, and it's not often you hear about that. You know what I mean? To quite literally like become one of the Ninja Turtles, and a lot of people that have like heard of sport karate but don't really follow it don't realize even in the movies, like those were all sport karate guys playing the Ninja.
yeah,
Matt Emig and Jeremy Marinas, I think, tag teamed Michelangelo. There were others. I think Michael
Ernie
Clark
Reyes,
was in that movie. What was that?
Ernie Ray,
Yeah, Ernie Reyes. I mean, yeah, the original Ninja Turtle series and everything, right? Ernie Reyes Jr.
yeah.
as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of sport karate lineage that has gone through the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle franchise. But anyway, absolutely, I loved what you were saying about kind of trying a little bit of everything just to be a good martial artist. And I like what you said about how your dad, anything that you were going to do in a form, he would make sure that you could hit something with it, right? So I want you to just talk a little bit about that. I mean, obviously, your dad was sitting in the coach's chair, guiding you at Pro Point over the weekend. So just talk a little bit about how special it is to have him as a coach and have him in your corner. And where did that start? Because you mentioned that you started training at a school, not really under your dad. So how did all of that go on?
Well, my dad, he did a little training, like nothing formal. Like, they had guys in his neighborhood, or well, a guy in his neighborhood knew karate, so he just teach it to his friends, basically. So as when I was born, of course, and when I was 3, we'd go to the school, and I started first, and then the instructor was like, "Man, you should just get in class," to my dad, and so he joined up a little bit after me. So I actually got him about a couple, maybe I'm gonna say about a month or so, but of course he progressed faster than I did being a 3-year-old, but it's just been great going on this journey with him, as opposed to just, him just teaching me. Like, we learned forms together, in certain forms, we learned them together. He was able to show me things. And even if I figured something out before he did, or learned something before he did, I was like, he allowed me to show him, or he might've just faked like he didn't know, and just, but you never know. So, but it's been a great experience over the years, and for him to develop into like a great coach, because he just fell in love with it as well, and like he always sought out knowledge. Like we were like, I'm gonna say my dojo, like we were great in our state, and but we were, I'm gonna say it, we were big fish in a small pond. You know what I mean? Because there's so much more out there, and once my dad wasn't afraid to ask. We would get around people. We would get around the great fighters. Once we started going to different tournaments, he asked Brian Pimple, like, how do you blitz? Like, what do you do? Like, tell me, what do we do? Mark Childress, he asked him, like, man, what's the footwork? Like, what's that footwork you guys are doing? Like, I see he's blitzing this way. Like, he would ask those questions. And then me just watching, like, I would take it back and I would try to incorporate it into my game. But what he always drilled in me was to just make sure I made it my own, and not just mimic the other fighters. I can take a little bit from here, take a little bit from there, and just incorporate it all and make it my own, make it fit my body, as opposed to just trying to pretend and be somebody the whole time. I did go through stages where I was, I don't know if everybody, but a lot of people go through that stage where they want to be Raymond, so, I was like, for a while, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm like, okay. Then I grew up a little bit more, and I'm like, all right, well, that don't really fit me. I'm getting hit when I do this. Maybe I need to do it like this or something, So, and my dad, he really helps me see those things. He knows me better than anybody. So I can pretty much trust anything he says when he's in the coach's box. Even if I don't see it myself, I can literally just go for it, because I know he sees it and he understands my body as well. He knows I can do it at that point in time. So he's pretty much, he's my top choice for coach at any time.
That's awesome. And it's so special. You talked about going through like your entire martial arts journey alongside your dad, and you guys helping each other out. That was going to be one thing that I asked about, because my dad never trained with me, but my dad was always the one that, like, we would train together, and he would tell me what to fix in my forms and things like that to make it look better. But then for a forms and weapons competitor, when I went out there in the ring, I didn't have anything to do with him. Like, we did our training, and then I was out there on my own. So do you feel like you guys, is it like always on the same page with what he's saying in the corner and what you're thinking? Or are there ever any times where there's maybe a little bit of butting heads? Or how does that go, having your dad as the guy in the corner?
As far as the button heads part, that's more so in training, I'll say. Because sometimes he has some ideas, and I'm just kind of like, but that guy is fast too, like he's gonna move or something, he's gonna take off, and I'm like, and he's like, nah, I'm telling you, if you do it like this, if you go for it, you're fast enough to do it. So I just kind of have to trust in him and believe in it. And me being an adult now, it makes it like we have more of those moments, because now I'm like, I'm a man too type situation, and it's not on purpose, but it's just a natural thing. And I have to humble myself and remember that he is my instructor. Because we went through together, but in 2000, so it's 2021 now, so 21 years or so. He's been my full-time instructor. Once we started our dojo or whatever. So he is my instructor. So I do have to humble myself and just listen to him pay attention to what he's saying. But when we're in tournaments or whatnot, yeah, sometimes he's yelling out some things that I might not agree with. But to be honest with you, if I trust him, like if I just go for it, he can see me that much. Like he understands my body that much to where like he sees things I don't see sometimes. So I might as well just trust it and go for it. Worst case scenario, I lose a point. So yeah.
That's great. It's kind of cool to have a secret weapon like that in a way. That it's like that even if you don't think it's going to work, you just trust him, and it works out a lot of the time. So that's a very cool relationship that you guys have. And so now we've talked about the journey a little bit. Now I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that journey has brought you, some of the success that you've had. And we're going to talk about being a member of Team Dojo Elite here in a moment. So let's focus on pre-Team Dojo Elite in your days of doing more NBL and maybe getting used to doing some NASCA competitions. What are some of your career highlights, big memories, and feel free to brag a little bit. Say some of your biggest wins that you've had.
Well, definitely, I'm gonna start off with being a member of Team GOP. Back in the day, I was a junior, but I was right along next to Regina Thompson, Willie Hicks, Jason Holmes. You know what I mean? It's crazy, like just being underneath people like that. And Donald Vickers, I won a world title with him as well as with Sage North. We fought teams together. It's just that's probably like my whole youth. Like I grew up literally underneath those people, and it's like I grew up in this sport, but literally just with those people with their arms around me. So it's like that's a great experience. That's like one of the most things I'm proud of, because I'm proud of them and they're proud of me, and they're part of my family. But like that's one of the things I'm most proud of. I won a lot of NBL titles. Right now I think I'm at like 15 NBL titles, and they're point and continuous titles. So I never got me a forms title. I always wanted one, but you never could get out of that get to that 2 spot where I can make it to stage. But I won a couple of those. I ended up finally winning a couple of overalls. Once they brought the overall back, I won 3 of those in a row. That's probably one of my biggest accomplishments, to be on that list of the people who have won that. Well, since it came back, it's a small list, but like prior to that, there's a lot of the old legends are on the list of people who won that. And for me to be a part of that and be on that multiple times, was just a great experience. I traveled a lot, went to the Mexican Open, won out there being the only American. Well, me and Willie Hicks, of course, were the only 2 Americans there. And we like, I love Mexico, but we were like, we were against, it was just us against them, really, and they made it evident, I mean, and it's great because they got great fighters over there. A lot of people can't make it to the States to compete. But they're like, you go down there and you're seeing guys you never heard of or never saw before, but they are like killers. And, you just going at them with them over there. Just times like that, man, it's just some of my great times. And definitely when Alex called me, and we first put me on WKF, when he called me, and Josh Horowitz called him and then told him about me after he had already was looking at me. And it was like, we gelled together like that. I think as a team, we had some good runs. We definitely had some good runs. We never broke that cusp. Like Impex was cranking it hard, and definitely JPM was doing their thing for sure. But at the Battle of Atlanta, myself, Jim Haymore, as well as my man Christopher Robinson, we ended up beating 2 JPM teams, and we won the Battle of Atlanta. That's in NASCAR. That's probably like one of my biggest wins, because we had 2 comeback wins, back to back on stage, and no nothing against Paul Mitchell, but they had their team ramped up. There was the guys who they was ready. They had just brought them in. And, we knocked them off, and it was just great feelings like that. Some of my best experience in life are just like being at karate tournaments, really. Whether it's just being on the side watching or being in the ring, some of them are just my greatest experiences in life. I love it.
That's awesome. And what's crazy is I actually remember that Battle of Atlanta team fight, because that was the fight that for me put you on the map. I had heard about you before, and I was always a fan of fighting, but I've always had a Paul Mitchell bias because I've always been a Paul Mitchell guy. So I knew the Paul Mitchell fighters really well. And anybody who wasn't Paul Mitchell, I didn't know as well until they beat Paul Mitchell, right? That's how fighters who weren't on Paul Mitchell got my respect, is they beat my guys, and I'd be like, that guy's pretty good. And I remember you fought the anchor in that last fight. I think you fought the anchor against Tomas, and you came in down, and then you beat Tomas by like 4 or 5 points, I think, to get ahead and take the lead.
Yeah.
Which for me, a Paul Mitchell guy, was like, somebody beat Tomas by 5, like what? But it was you, and so that was kind of the moment in which you gained my respect. And speaking of respect, that is certainly something that Team Dojo Elite Power, since the merger, has gained. You guys have one of the premier fighting teams in the world, certainly one of the top 3 or 4, solid case for being the best point fighting team in the world right now. Obviously, Cameron Dawson, who is one of, if not the best heavyweights in the world, yourself. And then from there, the roster is just stacked. Zane Pedraza, you talked about Mexican fighters, right? I'm pretty sure Zane's originally from Mexico, right?
Yes, yeah.
So many others that I'm leaving out: Devin Hopper and Pablo Moreno, Zach Winder. And
not no more. Pablo moved on, but yeah, Pablo.
Oh, did Pablo? My bad. Nobody heard me say that. Nobody heard me say
Zach,
that.
my man Jeremy Francoeur out there, Jim Haymore out there, Kitana, Everett. We got Jules. We stacked up over here. I'm not gonna lie. And then we got our junior team is rolling too. You know, they on the ball. They ready, trying to get themselves in position for when they transition to adults. But to be honest, man, I'm blessed to have some good guidance. First, I was with a family knit team and being with Gallios and GOP all those years. For me to come from that and go into WKF, where we were just really a family, and for us to evolve into this TDE thing, man, it's crazy. Like, to be with actual, like, close-knit family members. Sometimes you end up just with guys who you know meet up with, or you just fighting with. But we learn, we were Zooming, we could get on the Zoom and train with each other. We could call and ask each other questions, not just about karate, about life in general. You know, I left out Mike Simmons. Sorry, Mike, but Mike, I can ask Mike some info about anything. He'll give me it'll be a good monologue. You know, it'll be a monologue, but it'll be a good one. He'll give me some info, you know what I mean, about anything I need, you know, I have questions about. And same as with Josh, and definitely with Alex. But Alex is one of my best friends, man. To be honest with you, he's grew into one of my best friends. I love that guy for real. So, like, our team is great. And then you add our skill levels to it. You know what I mean? Like, once that comes into question, like, Cam pushes us to another level, because, like, I love my brother, but man, he don't let you slack. He don't let you, you know, be average. Really, he doesn't allow it. He gets that from his father as well. I'm hurt that I wasn't able to, because I was only on the team. We only merged like maybe a couple months before his passing, and really, just in that little bit of time, he would send messages and tell me what should I do. He asked, what I like, how do I train? You know what I mean? He would give me some insight on what I should do. Tell me, he sent us, like, one thing, he sent the team a video about the importance of stretching one time. And, like, I just play that back right now. I'm sitting on the floor stretching, you know, like I do. So, like, I just, like, play that back from time to time just to hear it. Because, to be honest with you, I was looking forward to, like, having him in my corner and getting that experience from him like that. I didn't get the full opportunity to go through that, but I'm still blessed to get an extension of that through Cam.
Absolutely. Very cool. So I apologize for the Pablo Moreno mistake there. That's my bad. But some other names you mentioned, very important there, because, you know, we talk about, you know, maybe people are like, well, how do we know that Team Dojo is one of the best teams, right? We already talked about Cam. You were a testament to his leadership, right? And how good of a leader he is. In addition to that, Kitana Everett is one of the top female fighters in the world right now. Mike Simmons is one of the top senior fighters in the world right now. So it's not just like you guys have a stacked men's fighting roster. Outside of that, in the other fighting divisions, you guys also have top competitors in those divisions as well, which is a testament to your coaching staff and their recruitment, and obviously the merger with WKF Power Team as well, and being able to kind of mix all of that together and create the powerhouse that is Team Dojo Elite now. So now we're going to shift a little bit. We're going to talk about what we came here to talk about. which is Pro Point. Pro Point 4 happened over the weekend. You took home the grand prize. You were the last man standing at Pro Point 4. But first, just speak generally. What are some of your favorite highlights about Pro Point, and what makes it different? What makes it truly special for sport karate?
Man, Pro Point is awesome. It's taking this thing to a whole nother level. I say it every time I get an interview, but like they pick us up from the airport. Well, first they call you, fill you in, and keep in constant communication. You know, we doing Zoom calls, we getting updates on this, on what might happen. You get guaranteed money and you sign your actual contract. You know what I mean? So like it's not just you're fighting tomorrow, sign this. You know, it's rules in there. It's fighters, the amount of fighters, everything's in there. It's a legit contract that you're signing. And then from there, you're getting your airport ticket paid for. They're picking you up, limos and whatnot, or Ubers if you're getting there a little later. But they're doing the whole shabam, hotels, and then the event is just it's ran great. You know your start times. Like I said, constant communications. They're giving you schedules, allowing you to be straight, and they treating us like stars. Really, they got posters printed. We doing autographs, signings, and whatnot. Like it just, even though like you don't want to let that stuff just go to your head, but that stuff makes you as a fighter feel good about yourself, regardless. You know what I mean? I'm a little older. I've been able to experience some of those things before, but not to this level. We signing autographs, we getting gear, we get. It's just awesome. It really is awesome. I love the experience. And then like just with it being, it shows you a difference between point sparring and pro point sparring. Even when you get into the rules and whatnot of the competition, it's just a difference. It's not the same thing we've been doing over and over again. You look forward to something new and you pick up your training level. Or well, I know for me, it forced me to pick up my training, focus on it a little more, and to add things to my game that I might not necessarily just do in a regular point sparring match. It pushed me to a limit. I got friends and family who may not have never watched me before are watching me now, but part of that is because of the platform that they gave me to do this. Because I've been fighting for years, and them same people. I mean, hey, I'm going to a tournament this weekend. I'm going to, but now I have a platform, and they're putting it out there, and it's just awesome. I love it.
And I love how you hit on, to me, the two biggest things. Number one, putting the athletes first, putting the fighters first. All of the things that they do surrounding the event, and the event itself is designed for the fighters and for them to gain more exposure, which brings me to the second thing that I love that you mentioned is the platform. Never before has there been a platform with this much potential outside of the once a year US Open on ESPN2, right? Mm-hmm. And even then, point fighting typically only gets one or two events, right? They split that with arms and weapons and breaking and self-defense and everything else, right? And so for point fighting to have this type of a platform is something that's truly special and is historic for sport karate to have already, regardless of what Pro Point is going to do in the future, which we know they're going to do big things, but they've already made history with what they've done, which has to make everybody involved feel good. And you talk a bit about kind of changing your training and what was required for you to really be successful in Pro Point. At the first Pro Point event, you make it all the way to the final and have to face Bailey Murphy, who's one of the hottest fighters in the world, right? Bailey Murphy comes out on top then in a very well-contested fight there. That was an excellent match. Then you come back at Pro Point 3, you find yourself fighting Jason Borelli, and unfortunately wind up knocking him out, which got you disqualified because it is point fighting. It's a no knockout sport. And so you took the tough, unfortunate disqualification there. That's not your fault. You were just fighting and clipped him good once, and that was it. You can't help it. And so given those experiences and coming up short and having the unfortunate disqualification, did that affect how you prepared for Pro Point 4? Or did you just kind of stick to what your plan always is and it happened to work out this time? How did that affect leading up to the event?
Definitely it changed my aspects, what I need to do. Fighting Bailey, man, if you're not at 100%, you can't beat, well, I'm not gonna say you can't, but more than likely you're not gonna beat the dude. You know what I mean? He's really like has the argument of being the top fighter in the world. So you're not gonna beat him if you're not at 100%. So what I had to do immediately once they told me I had another shot at fighting him was to just go through and train as hard as I possibly could. You know, I got a little stronger, tried to get myself a little faster, making my hands a little faster, but also had to take into account that we're not just doing regular point sparring. Uh, the difference between like pro point and regular point, from what I'm seeing, like being on the inside with the judges, the main thing is that, like for instance, the easiest way to put it with the little things that we get away with in point sparring, like when they do the takeoff and the hands fully extended already, and then they touch you and you score, or if like a kick barely goes past your head or something like that, and you're as a fighter arguing like, yo, he didn't even hit me or something like that, you don't have to deal with those type of things. But also you don't get those type of things like if as a fighter. So you have to overemphasize your technique and make sure you rechamber and everything. A lot of the judges are they were older point fighters, but also we have some younger point fighters, but also people did kickboxing, people did traditional martial arts. So it's a well-rounded panel. And like even though as fighters we all see like, you know, the differences in the scoring is like we confuse a little bit, but we only confuse because we're expecting the regular point fight. You know what I mean? We're expecting that to happen like that. But really this is something completely different. Now it's taken, you know, from what we do already, but it is something different. You know what I mean? So just finding a good adjustment, or finding that adjustment with that, paying attention to the fights and the scoring that's happening, and trying to incorporate that into my game that I already have, you know, and that's kind of what the training camp consists of, that and a lot of conditioning.
Absolutely, because you got to fight 2-round fights, and if you're going to win, you got to fight 3 2-round fights all the way through. So conditioning is a huge part of it, and I love how you talk about, really to summarize it, that transition from being a point fighter to being a pro point fighter. It becomes a different game, and that's a very significant part of all of this. And so now let's talk about the actual matchups. We talk about how important matchups are. Obviously, any fighter is looking at that bracket beforehand to kind of see what their path to winning is. So we're going to get into your specific matchups that you had. But whether it was a fighter that you fought or a fighter that you did not fight, when you looked at that bracket coming into pro point, who were you looking at as the person you needed to watch out for? Like when I enter a weapons division, I may be competing against 15 people, but I'm like, these are the 1 or 2 guys that I need to prepare for, right? So who out of that field to you was, maybe not just because of their talent, but because of their matchup with your game and the game that they play, the way they fight, who was it that you were kind of looking at as that one to look out for, or 2 or 3?
Well, I just basically, in the beginning, I realized everybody else got to lose for me to win. So that was my first thought, right? So then I look at the side of the bracket I'm on, and I look at the other side. And I picked Leo to come out on that side of the bracket, and I was just because of his background, his aggressiveness, and I was like, man, I'm gonna have to fight 2 fights, and then I'm gonna have to fight Leo. Because we did a set match one time before, back at the hit tournament in Miami, and it was a hard hitting match. You know what I mean? I'm like, man, I got to deal with this. You know what I mean? He been fighting this, he gonna be banging. I'm like, all right, cool. So I got to do that after fighting either. Well, no offense to Renee, but I'm not thinking about losing. So I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna dominate this first fight, and then I'm gonna have to go up against either Jamal or Brandon. I had no clue what was gonna happen out there because I know what Jamal is capable of, but I also know how great Brandon is and how great he's been fighting at this point. He's on a hot streak and he's rolling. So I'm like, all right, my second match is going to be a hard match, you know what I mean? So I got to come in prepared. Not to count out Coca, who made it to the end, but I just saw Leo coming out of that side. So and I was just looking towards my second match, knowing that I was going to have to fight either one of those 2 guys, and ended up being Brandon, man. I was, so It's what it is.
And we're going to get to that one because that would become pretty much the undisputed fight of the night. But we'll just go in order, right? So you talk about
Yeah.
fighting Renee, obviously, no offense to him, but I think that a big part of you being as dominant as you were in that fight was exactly that mentality, the confidence that you came into the fight with. From the moment that the center ref, Steven Arroyo, said go, it seemed like there was no chance that you were going to lose. You took the center of the ring. You were the aggressor. You were the one scoring on almost every clash. So just kind of take us through that. What is that all mentality? And then anything that you remember from that fight, or maybe in the second round, anything that surprised you a little bit that you had to adjust to? Just kind of walk us through that fight, maybe briefly, because it was it wasn't a close one.
It was like you said, the mentality. My pops, pumped me up in the back, like, you about to go out here, you're gonna dominate this match. He let me know what I needed to do, what I had to do, what he trusted I could do. And I just had to trust in myself and go ahead and execute. So just being in the match, my main thing once I got called into this card was because I'm lighter and a lot of people was cutting down a little bit. So my idea was to not get hit, not get hit, not necessarily get hit, because I know I'm gonna get hit, but not get caught solid, which didn't work out in that second matchup. But but to not get caught with solid shots, because I knew if I got caught with a solid shot, it would be a heavy shot. So I wanted to be a little lucid, be in and out, but make sure every time I got in, I was at least leaving 3 behind. So that was my plan. It worked. And then towards that second round, we just kind of shut it down. We got this thing, if my dad was yelling it, if he don't come over here, we're not gonna hit him. So and sometimes that's a part of getting into the other fighter's head. That's a coach's job too. A lot of coaches got a lot of things they yell and say, to help their fighter out in that situation. But I just decided to take the center of the ring and conserve my energy, and I guess entertain a little bit as well. But and just shoot my sidekick, try to stay safe, because I knew I had a hard next round coming up.
Absolutely. And the entertaining you certainly did, conserving that energy at a couple of points in the second round, going completely flat-footed. A lot of times, for people that don't know, point fighters like to maintain a steady bounce to help with reaction time in their takeoff and things of that nature. You had a couple of moments where you just kind of stood flat-footed there and waited for him to do something, which definitely is pretty entertaining. So now moving into that second fight, the fight of the night against Brandon Ballou, and wind up being Brandon who beat Jamal and came into that semifinal. And I'm just going to kind of let you tell us about it, because it was an epic fight with a lot of ups and downs. At the end of the first round, you get clipped hard with a right hand from Brandon. You go to the ground, mouthpiece flies out. And everybody, at least in the commentating booth, we're like, is it going to happen again? Is there going to be another DQ? But then you got up quickly. Brandon actually helped you up, and you recovered great. You obviously weren't, 2 days or anything. You were fine. So just kind of take us through your experience going through that fight, and then obviously take us through the highlight, the technique of the night in the second round, where you returned that favor with a beautiful jump spinning back kick, landed right on his chin. Didn't knock him out, but at full power, not in a point fighting match, definitely could have, right? But I'll shut up. You go ahead and kind of take us through what you were seeing that whole fight.
That second fight, me and Brandon, like I said, we fight pretty often. I moved up, so we kind of always in the same weight class now. And so, I'm used to him taking off and being, coming with that blitz or whatnot. And sometimes he just ahead of the game. He's just getting there. So that first round, he was getting off, But with it being pro point, a lot of times he was taking off. He was throwing the first hand, and his hand was getting off first. But I may have gotten mine off a little bit, and like it was just going that way, like back and forth, kind of. But when I watched, he was on top of me that first round. Keeping the pressure on me. So. And then when he clipped me with that shot, man, it was a good one. I had to tell him during the fight, he was looking like good shot. Had me looking for my mouthpiece. I'd say like Velma on Scooby-Doo, looking for a glass. But it was just it was a great fight, man. Always a heavy hitting fight when I'm fighting Brandon. So I had to make sure I try to keep my distance and try to keep him at bay with my sidekick. But his movement was on point. He made it real hard for me to do that, especially when pursuing. And I like to pursue a little bit. So had to kind of like dial it back a little bit. And I think that's what kind of saved me, to be honest with you.
Mhm. Absolutely. So we move into that second round. Your adjustments were apparent. And it was probably a combination of things, right? After Brandon clips you, clearly he doesn't want to get disqualified. So maybe he tries to ease back on the power a bit. Maybe that changes his strategy some. He actually said after the fight that, clipping you a little bit didn't affect the way that he fought, which is a good thing for you because that means that it was all your adjustments.
I was really going to say that, man, because I don't like, I actually heard you say that while I watched it back. I was like, man, I don't think he was that slowed him down, man. Cause with like man, I love Brandon, man. He's like, I like the stand-up dude, he's a good fighter. And I don't feel like he has the mindset of, okay, just because that happened, I'm about to ease off. Cause in this game that we do in points fighting, and on the level we do it at, there is easing off is the matter of winning or losing, really. A lot of the times you can't ease off against the level of competition that we're competing against. You know what I mean? So like he was going doing this thing still, man. He was still hitting hard, and I tried to throw some back at him as well. You know what I mean? So now he took off on me that first time and got me with that one, and I tried to hit him with a D side, but he kind of ran through it. So like I just tried to space him out, and luckily he kind of baited into me giving that space a little bit, and he took off from a little further than what he was taking off with from. And he ran into that I threw the side kick and I stepped down, and he was just right in the spot for me to hit him with that back kick. That's actually something that we train. That's like one of our black belt techniques that we train at our dojo. And like one of my master, Leonard Hargrove, he called it lunch line. So I'm from New Orleans, and like unfortunately we got a lot of bullies. So when you're in that lunch line, if you got a fresh haircut, you might get slapped in the back of the head. This isn't funny, kids. You better not do this at home. This is so. But so we call that technique the lunch line. That dude standing behind you and he uptight on you. You take flight and you light him up with that back kick right there in the lunch line. So he happened to just be right into that spacing. And I was able to take off, and it just worked out. Sometimes technique.
That's awesome, and that was
like you train them. So
yeah, I mean that's awesome, and that's kind of what I was getting to, talking about. Brandon said after the fight that he didn't let off any. It didn't look, watching the fight back, didn't look like he really let off any. So it was your adjustments, that's what's won you the fight. And a huge part of that was that giant momentum swinging, jump spinning back kick with just under 30 seconds left in the fight. It's a 3-point technique. We have to believe that every judge saw that and scored it. I want to talk a little bit about that moment, because that was the moment of the night. When you landed that kick, the crowd there absolutely erupted. So forget the technique, forget martial arts for a second. How did that feel, just as a performer, feeling that heel hit his face and then hearing the crowd's reaction? Tell us about that emotion.
Man, that's a crazy feeling when you hear everybody, roaring, like because we were surrounded. So people in the crowd screaming like crazy. It felt like we were back at one of those big tournaments when everybody's standing there watching you for grands or something like that. It was just a great feeling to have that. My initial thought was, did I land back in bounds? You know what I mean? So, and luckily I did. I actually tried. So, but when I threw it, I landed that first foot in bounds. So I guess that is what, that counts as in bounds, because one foot's up. And then I stepped down. I told my dad, I was like, did I land in bounds? He said, you worrying about the wrong thing. You know what I mean? So but it was, a great feeling, to get a technique like that off. Like you said, when you work and stuff and it actually works out and it comes out right, that's a great feeling. Nothing like that in the world.
Absolutely. And you talk about how that was a technique that you'd worked on, and how, you kind of knew what situation you needed to be in to throw it. And obviously it's an integral part of your game. I mean, your kicking ability, especially your aerial and your spinning kicking ability, oftentimes with your opponents that aren't as experienced, can change the way they fight, because they're scared of those kicks coming at you, right? So you get a mental edge right off the bat from having those kicks. So at what point did that become such an important part of your game? And then, by the way, for those of you that are watching and maybe only saw Ryan fight at Pro Point, this is nothing new for him. This is he routinely puts out these highlight techniques. And I was talking to Josh about this. We think you land probably 50% or better of your jump spinning kicks, which is insane. Like, to hit over 50% of your jump spinning technique attempts is ridiculous. So obviously it's something that you plan for, but how did that come about? Did you say, like, I want to be a kicker like that, or did it happen organically? How did it become such a big part of your game?
And my style is called Korobushi Kai Karate Do Kempo. And we incorporate, like, it's a hybrid system. Shotokan is our base, but like our formed base is Shotokan, but everything else in our system, like I said before, it just pulls from other systems. So like that's where it comes from, not being afraid to open myself up to those things and not being just closed-minded, and this is the only way to do it. So and all that, and definitely Kung Fu theater, you know what I mean? I wanna like all of that stuff, they doing it in a movie for some reason, you know what I mean? And it's either they doing it just because to make it cool in the movie, or somebody somewhere threw this thing at somebody and it was like, let's try it like that. Let's add this in. So I want to be that somebody somewhere. You know what I mean? And like I said, he didn't let me throw anything like my tricks. I'm talking about from a cartwheel to the backflip. I used to have to hit with the cartwheel and then hit with the backflip. You know what I mean? So it's like he didn't let me throw that stuff unless I was able to hit a pad with it. And it definitely helped out. And I see those arguments. I don't like to get in them all the time because, of course, the people arguing are the greatest martial arts of all time, and you can't win an argument with those guys. But that stuff wouldn't work, and this wouldn't work, and this and this, and I just like to just prove them wrong time and time again. Just try to do it with actions, you know what I mean? Because if I, talk too much crap and then I get knocked out doing a backflip, they gonna, you know what I'm saying? But now it is what it is. I just go for it, So I try my best, I try my best to incorporate those things in my game. And I like to be entertained. One of my grandmasters, he was David Crowd Pleaser Blunt. He was a crowd pleaser. And I just, I incorporate that in my game. He didn't take that name. He had that name, and I heard it, and I was like, man, that's a great name. I want it. But, so I just try to incorporate that into my game.
Absolutely. And I love it. And we all know that the fans love it too, especially based on that reaction that we saw at Pro Point. And for those of you guys that are watching that, once again, have never seen Ryan before, I was talking to Angel Diaz, one of the other fighters on the card after the show, just to give you guys an understanding of how much of a freak athlete Ryan George is. I know I'm talking about you in the third person, but anyway, this man was backstage warming up, doing backflips as part of his warm-up. This is a point fighter. He's not going out there to do an extreme form. This is a point fighter backstage doing backflips to warm himself up to kick somebody in the head. That's the kind of athlete that Ryan is. But I digress. Let's go ahead, because we're starting to run out of time here. Let's go ahead and get to the final fight. You mentioned that you kind of predicted Leo to come out of it. I think that was a lot of people's pick was Leo based on the fighting style and what we've seen from Leo before, fighting in World Combat League and all the other things that Leo has accomplished. Mm-hmm. But it wound up being Oscar Coca Guzman. So what is that like, going into a match where you thought it was probably going to be Leo, you wind up with another very formidable fighter. I mean, just over a year ago, he was beating Jack Felton at the Warrior Cup and then coming up just short of Avery Plowden from winning the Warrior Cup, right? So Oscar, definitely an accomplished fighter, a threat. So what's going through your mind going into that match, which maybe wasn't the match you expected?
To be honest with you, I saw that he won right before I had to fight Brandon. So, once he won, it was just like, okay, I got to fight him. He got to lose for me to win, basically. So, it's not that hard of a transition for me, at least, like mentally, just unless I'm like fighting in a camp for weeks at hand and I'm knowing I'm going to fight this person, but at a tournament, it's all like, that's part of being a point fighter. It's always unpredictability. Fighting open weights, fighting just in your division, you never know who you're going to be matched up against, you know what I mean? So it just gives you, that edge It gives you that that edge to just be able to adapt to whatever's going on. So
Absolutely. And I love how you brought up that point about it being, part of a point fighter's job. We go to, or well, not we, because I'm not a point fighter, but point fighters go to a karate tournament, right? And, if you're doing open weight, like let's take the Irish Open as the best example, you're doing open weight, it could be your first round and you're up against Raymond Daniels, who's over 6 foot tall and all that. Greatest point fighter of all time in the eyes of a lot of people, right? Or you could be going up against one of the top lightweights in the world in the middle of the bracket, right? Like you could fight Raymond and then have to go and fight Justin Ortiz and his kicking ability as a lightweight. You know what I mean? So it's very unpredictable what point fighters have to face whenever they're going into one of the open tournaments. But last question. You've now, by winning Pro Point 4, put yourself in an elite class of point fighters that have won Pro Point events. And it's an impressive list of names. Bailey Murphy, who you mentioned, has an argument for being the top point fighter in the world right now. Jack Felton, all-time great lightweight point fighter. Christian Rivas, one of the hottest point fighters in the game right now, potentially the star of Team Legend. He's been the one who's been out there and winning the most recently for Team Legend. And then obviously yourself, and we've been through how much you've accomplished. So a very short list, a very accomplished list of fighters. And because of the way the weight classes work out, this is looking pretty good for what would be a set match between you and Pro Point 3 champion Christian. So preview that matchup for us a little bit. What are your thoughts going into that, and kind of what are your predictions for how that fight would look and how it would go?
Well, I'm gonna definitely have to predict that I would win that fight. Now it's not gonna be easy. Christian's a great fighter. He's an awesome fighter. Great speed, great length. Which complicates things a little bit with him being just as tall, if not just a tad bit taller than me, if I'm not mistaken. But I feel like I have the tools, I have the mental capacity, and with it not being scheduled right now, I have the time to make sure I'm prepared, for it to happen. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Obviously I wanted to fight Bailey at first, to have that opportunity to fight him again. But with me being on this side now, I'm looking forward to fighting Christian. There's Pro Point winners, but we have an opportunity to make the first Pro Point champion. So if I could be a part of that history, because with Pro Point, I feel like it's here to stay. Like it's gonna be our thing. Like I think for point fighters coming up, like train yourselves, prepare yourselves, because Josh Horowitz, Ernest Miller, Alex Reyes, Mike Conroy, they're looking they're keeping it actively scouting fighters to put them in this position, and I feel like it's gonna be here to stay for the long haul. And I'm not old at all, so I'm gonna be up here getting it in. But I would love for when I am of the caliber age of the older guys, I would love to be able to come in and watch this, and be a part of this, hop on a broadcast and call fights with you or something like that. Like this, it would be like wonderful to do that. And Pro Point gives me that opportunity. And with that being said, I got a little off subject, but I would love to be the guy standing up there talking, and for you to be like, I'm here with the first Pro Point champion, Ryan George. So it would be a great experience to do that. And, Christian Rivas would have to be the guy I would have to beat to do that. So in order for me to do that, he has to lose. So I'm just going to do it.
That is incredible. And one thing that I always say is the best champions always have the best vision. They see themselves in that position long before anybody else imagines themselves in that position. And so the foresight that you have there to look that far ahead and see yourself in that light is something that I think definitely gives you an edge. And I will be on the edge of my seat commentating that fight between you and Christian. And that mega fight potentially sets up a mega fight, right? Like if that fight happens and Jack and Bailey happens, then the winner of Jack and Bailey is probably going to get the winner of you and Christian, which would the world might just come to an end at that point. But I certainly agree with you. Pro Point is here to stay. It was an honor to call your fights. It would be an honor to call fights alongside you as well. So Josh, if you're listening, next time Ryan's not fighting, maybe throw him in the booth with us too. I had a great time up there with Ernest and Alex. We had a great booth going, had good chemistry, and it was just an honor for me to commentate. So thank you, Josh, really for helping me get that opportunity. And it's a little hidden passion of mine. So hopefully you guys will hear or me commentating for more point fighting and more sport karate events in the near future. So that's all that I'll say for now. But Ryan, thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate it. It truly was an honor to call this Pro Point event and watch you go through that whole bracket and get that win. You deserved it. You were the most electric fighter that night. You took the win, and I wish you all the best moving forward. Any last words for our audience before we head out of here?
Just keep training, guys. Keep putting that work in. Pro Point's here to stay. Shout out to Future Kick Martial Arts and Fitness and Team Dojo Elite. Holla at your boy.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again so much, Ryan. And thank you to everybody that is tuning in. This has been an awesome show. Once again, this is Pro Point 4 winner, Ryan George. He's got big things ahead of him. Pro Point's got big things ahead of all of them. This message is brought to you by Black Belt Magazine, the world's leading magazine of martial arts. So thank you all for your support. If you enjoyed this episode, drop those comments, ask us some questions, like, comment, share, you know, all that good stuff. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm Jackson Rudolph, and this has been episode 58 of the Jackson Rudolph podcast, and I'll see you next time.